All right. Edmund Knighton, you're back. This is part four. Um, we're going to bring a lot of the concepts we've already talked to into one really important conversation about masculinity. And I will do a proper intro, but I want to make sure that people appreciate how much time you've invested with men over the past, let's say, I don't know, however many years. So tell me about the process of men's work and why this is so critical right
Mm-hmm.
now in the world.
hmm Good morning, brothers. Good to see you.
So good to see you every single time, Edmund.
I, for me, men's group is essential. I would say, in a way, has saved my life and has given me reasons to live and processes to live by, and accountability, and fellowship and intimacy, and has allowed me to develop friends that can challenge me when I go out of my own lane, and they can ask me questions, and I know that they're doing it because they care, because they love me, and because they can't not do it if they really love me. Have the hard conversations, have the times when maybe I'm pissed at them because I don't see what they're saying, or I don't want to see it, and yet they're faithful. They stay with me on that, and I know that they're doing it, and they have the capacity to sit with my discomfort, to sit with my pushing back against them and my defensiveness and my blind spots. Those are all the reasons that work is essential to me. I'm not sure if there's more that you want to know about that. It's work that started, gosh, I'm almost 60 and I was 20, and I met this guy who was 40 years older than I was in his 60s, so where I am now. And Mark was his name, beautiful guy. And then there was this other guy, he was 40, so we had like 20, 40, and
Yeah,
60.
like three generations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what was so cool, because we attracted then men in their 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way into their 60s. So it was, in a way, it was the most diverse group. And the first one, we called it the Western Reserve Men's Council in Ohio. And we'd have 50 or 60 men, and we would do community projects like Fathering the Earth Day. And we had this, oh, Nathan, you would love this. I just realized, wow, we had this process that I was developing, because I always work with, I was working with kids at that point. And as a movement educator in Waldorf, it's not just the movement of the body, but it's the movement of the energy body, the emotional body, the mental body, the spiritual body. And so I invited the men to create a womb, a birth canal. And so you
Wow.
got to imagine there's 50 guys here. And the man stands at the beginning of the birth canal. And at the end of the birth canal, all the way at the end, Mark is there, and he's got a drum and a candle and sage, and he's beating the heartbeat of the mother. So you're in the womb, and you're looking between these two rows of 25 men each. And they are as close together as you want them to be. They can be standing, they can be sitting, they can be facing you, they can have their backs to you. They can make you fight like hell to get through the womb. They can have a smooth glide. They can literally carry you through, flow you through by lifting you up, and you're not on the ground. You get to decide, do I want to recapitulate my birth process? Do I want to have a what Ron Kurtz and Hakomi would call a missing experience? Do I want to actually have the experience that I wanted to have coming into this world? Do I want to have a mixture? Do I want to be surprised and let you men decide what my birth experience will be? So spontaneity, and then dealing with whatever happens as I'm
Yeah.
moving through now. And at the end, we all circle around that man. So the womb becomes the circle of the men in life, in the world. And because Mark was the elder, the oldest man, he would stop with a drum. He would stand and face the man, and he would say, "Welcome into the world."
All right, we're pulling our first audible, which is one of many. I was going to talk about, what happens when we die, where do babies come from? We're going to skip right to the birth experience.
Okay.
Why? Let me also ask, just as a conjecture,
Hmm.
did this experience, when you introduce this, let's say to the newbie,
Yeah.
25-year-old, I don't know,
Yeah.
did it give them apprehension?
Man,
And
you're
why?
nailing it, brother. You're
Yeah.
nailing it. So there was a kid. I mean, and he was a kid. He was the youngest man. His name was Chad. And
Hey, Chad, if you're
yeah,
listening.
shout out to Chad. And he came into that experience, and it was beyond apprehensive for him. It was overwhelming for him. And the difficulty, which I have since learned because I had such pain, he ended up not being able to look us in the eyes, because a big
Mhm.
part of this work is around coming into the world at eye contact, not just EYE, but like the letter I, the higher being that's
Seeing another
coming,
person. Hmm.
yeah, into the world, and then being witnessed, and taking in nourishment. And this is one of the biggest challenges in men's groups is, can you be nourished and nurtured by the other men in the group, by their look, by their attention, by their words? Sometimes challenging words, strict words, not harsh, but strict words of calling you to yourself. And he was unable to do that after his birth experience. And sometimes, in that youth exuberance, you overstep what it is that you want to try to harvest and integrate and re-experience, and you re-traumatize. And this was, as a 20-year-old, I was in that place of just being enthusiastic and wanting him to go for it. And he wanted to do a deep dive on his birth, but it was too deep a dive, and it would have been better to actually support by helping him modulate and asking him some deep questions like, this is a lot based on your birth history. Is this where you start? We can do this exercise as many times as you want. So let's be thoughtful. Let's be cautious. Uh, but I wasn't there. And so I didn't catch that. And he didn't make the eye contact, and he left the group.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still carry sadness around that.
Mm.
And yet I did the best I could do. It was what I knew. But it's good that I carry sadness about it, so that I always remember
Mm.
when a man comes into the group that the true master is self-limiting, that we need to be able to titrate our experience. We need to stay within a window of tolerance. We need to make sure our witness is online, that our breathing is regulated, that we're stable and we feel our feet on the ground, that we are oriented to time and space. And that part of ourselves, to get back to your journey, for example, that's what we want, is that witness to be present, so that all those experiences can be cataloged and integrated, rather than we just get blown wide open and we might feel bliss, or our boundaries dissolve, but we don't necessarily do the work to integrate afterward.
Integration. Yeah, that's the word that was coming to me.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
just integration, but synthesis. Integration is just being able to put the bodies back
Yeah.
together.
Put the
Now,
pieces back together. Yeah.
but synthesis is the whole point of the work, which is to arrive at something new. And this is the work of shape shifting, for example, that the berserkers, the Norse men who became bears and wolves going into battle, if they weren't able to shake that off at the end, then they became berserk. They became madmen, and they were no longer leaders in their community. They were lost. They lost their identity as shape shifting, and so the witness needs to be able to be present in the shape shift, so that you can come back to your community with more
Yeah.
of a sense of spirit identity, and the personality identity is loosened and you're more free. Again, that's a
Mm.
totally different subject, but
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's an important moment right here to say that At this moment, I think the plight of men, like the male figure, is very clear. But I don't want to go too far with that because I want to peel back the layers of a man. I'll talk about myself, where there's this deeply masculine quality, of course, but there's also this deeply feminine quality that's been nurtured and nurtured and nurtured, which makes it very isolating sometimes in trying to engage with other men who have been taught this is how a man is. And this is like the most cliche stuff that we can talk about when we get into men's work. And I think that what this young man who came into your circle was experiencing was a direct confrontation with the stuff that actually was inhibiting his own growth. And if we can help beckon in a reformation of how men identify with masculinity, that actually is the medicine, so to speak, for carrying forth whatever is to come after this epoch. I don't really know if that's the right language, but I think in order to talk about, you know, flexing your masculinity in childbirth and whatnot, I think we need to get into the sacred polarities themselves. And maybe you could just, play around with the terms masculine and feminine. I'm speaking to the audience here. Just play around with that a little bit because I want Edmund, I'd love for you to describe for me in your 60, years or so of being here and at least 40 years or so of working with these magical terms. If you could just tell me, like right now, what does masculinity mean to you? And what does femininity mean to you? And
Mm,
why is it important that we nurture both of these things? This
okay.
is the big question of the day.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I can I can answer that, I guess, the best by feeling into it. And what I mean by feeling is Steiner has this picture that we can create a mood around our intelligence, and that leads us more into thinking that's embodied rather than abstract. He might call it intellecting. He never used that word, but that's what we're looking not to have as a kind of intellecting. And so with masculinity, there's a kind of mature masculinity that itself welcomes the feminine components of itself because it knows that that is wholeness. It remembers, this masculine part of us remembers that we were once whole, original human beings, that we were sexless, we were immortal, really, in a sense. And we dropped from that kind of immortality into reproduction. So we had creativity, and then we moved into procreativity in order to continue our species, but also to continue the grand experiment of splitting ourselves into two different parts and getting to experience more color in life as a result of that. Always with a knowing that we were given wholeness, and then we were, and when I say given, it's tough because we gave ourselves wholeness, and now we give ourselves this ability to have masculine and feminine, light and dark, and all of these so-called polarities in order to have more experience and in order to find what Steiner would call integration and what Ra would call balance. In a way, they amount to the same thing, but it's like different ways to go up the mountain.
Mm.
Once you're on top of the mountain, you get it. But while we're working, we all fight against what my ideology is versus what Nathan's is. And that's part of the fun too, because we get to believe we're separate, you and me. And so that's the dance is how does how does my masculinity invite my femininity to dance? There's a Celtic saying, never give a man a sword until he's learned how to
To
dance.
dance. Yeah, I love that.
And part of that dance it's an overall saying of until he's learned how to make love and really with himself. How is it that I can, Jung calls it the Ouroboros, where the snake devours its
Hmm.
own. can feel the sexual imagery in that, but it's so much more because that serpent is the Kundalini power, which is the infinite light of life, of intelligent infinity. And the masculine is the one that is, it's so tricky to say because the masculine has a kind of a container. It provides a container for the feminine, which is often
Mm.
very intimate. It's out and effusive, and it's the all, it's the matrix. And so it needs a container. And yet at the same time, this feminine quality is very much has a quality of a container, the womb itself, the backdrop of even darkness from which the kind of spirit light, which is often seen as the male component, and the soul being the darkness that gets illuminated, or the form that gets illuminated, and then life begins out of that. And so noticing that masculine containment is very different than feminine containment. But it's not that like, hey, the masculine is the container and it's all of that is reductionistic and not very helpful. And so realizing there's a deep flow to what it means to be masculine, and you can use the exact same items, if you will, like containment, like receptivity. If you think of Yeats and Rilke and um, these poets who feel the incredible receptivity of the feminine, who Proust, remembrance of things past, their ability to receive, to be inspired. That can be called a very feminine receptivity, and yet the activity, the active nature of it, of receiving, is very masculine. And so the same activity can be experienced in a masculine manner and a feminine manner. And as we start to realize that fluidity of that, we realize the complexity of it, but we also start to realize the simplicity of it, that it is returning back to the oneness almost without our awareness in a certain way. We're remembering that we're constantly the ones that are dividing these things from their unity. And the one who's masculine is able to, what? Trying to feel my way into how I would orient the masculine side of me. Whoa, that's interesting.
What was that?
It's a big crash of something in the
Oh my
house.
gosh. Wow. You had your eyes closed for those listening. Edmund had his eyes closed. He was deeply, deeply feeling into this. And then there was a crash.
Yeah,
Careful.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I love the even the orientation to that. Um, I know that my child is asleep and my wife is downstairs and the crash is up here. So uh, all are safe, and maybe material items need support later. But isn't that fascinating that that sort of boom, that crash comes? Oh, here's a dog who probably was a part of that crash. Yeah, what did you do? My male dog knocked something over. Yeah. Uh, that's a nice image. Yeah, we could even go with that. The uh, the idea of fairy tales, for example, uh, a man and his dog. There's something. Iron Hans was a Grimm's
Mhm.
fairy tale, and the situation is that this hunter comes into a forest where all the other hunters disappear, and the forest is, you can see it as uh, very typical of what fairy tales go into. It's a place of disorientation. And he comes to a pond, and a big hairy hand reaches up and grabs his male dog and just takes him under. And the hunter's response to that, unlike the previous hunters, is, well, looks like I found the spot. And so he grabs a bucket and he starts to do the work of excavating the pond. And this is often seen as is either tending the fire or excavating the pond or learning to fly and stay grounded. And when he gets to the bottom of the pond, he gets his dog, but he also gets his wild man. He
Mm,
gets this part of himself that is will not be tamed, will not be tamed. But wild is different than crazy, and
right.
this is a part of uh, what men come to learn in themselves. That instead of fearing their anger, they can recognize that it doesn't have to burn the forest down. Again, we're back to that sense of containment. You can burn a super hot fire, and when it's contained, it provides light and warmth. And that's what this hunter understands is, when my dog, which is a picture of my instinct and my loyalty, is taken and ostensibly drowned or removed from me, then I do the work to consciously reclaim my instinct and reclaim my loyalty. That's a very masculine, active process. That would be like the difference between simile and metaphor. Simile is uh, acting as if something or like something. Metaphor is becoming it.
Mm,
And so he's in that place of, and what I love about grammar is it's the bones of language, but it also represents the human psyche.
yeah.
Simile is like similar. It's like the shapeshifter, the the shitty shapeshifter um, tries to act like something, but is not actually able to embody it. And that's the difference between simile and metaphor. The metaphorical being is able to say, I am the ocean. And this is like again, back to your journey, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm a god talking to a human, but I'm both of these and I'm the medicine. And like, what am I doing? What's the purpose of this dialogue? The purpose is service. The purpose is that I have more capacity to hear the calling of other human beings who are in need and more ability to answer that call in a way that leaves me free. And that's the essence of masculine work is how do we uh, get willing to be messy, to get our hands dirty in a process with men, like not to know what's coming, to let a man get up and be enraged and be angry and be able to have 12 men there in a circle who are able to hold him and to experience his process so that we're not afraid of his process and he can find out what's happening after he's expressed that
Mm,
full expression of himself and the recognition that when that one man is working, all of us are working. That rage comes up. Nobody's sitting there going, oh, that's wild. That guy's enraged. He looks like he's about to burn the house down or kill all of us. We're not thinking about that. We're in relationship to this being we call anger or rage or murder. And can we all feel, yeah, I have a relationship to that? And some of us are hiding from it, and some of us are moving toward it, and some of us have done a little bit of work around it and are willing to witness it in this other and give him his
right.
process
Right.
rather than in our own. So that's a lot of um, a sense of how does what I'm trying to do in talking to you is talk from a place of masculinity, and I hope that that comes through in this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me throw a metaphor at you that I've heard a lot of people use. I've been using it myself, and this is going to get us into the role of a man in childbirth. A lot of men
Mm,
historically have either been asked to not be in the room, and then it
yeah.
was like, come in the room, but stay out of the way. And then
Yes.
it was like, you want to cut the cord? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
going rapidly through the sort of
No, I want
timeline.
to leave the cord connected until it's
Yeah, yeah,
empty. But thank
yeah.
you.
Right, right. And then it's like, you know, uh, I want to catch the baby, or I want to help catch the placenta. And one of my clients, who's they're due in February, home birth clients, he
Yeah.
in his raw hands was there with the placenta. And this is a really dear friend of mine. His name's Jeffrey. Hey, Jeffrey. He wouldn't mind me mentioning him. Um,
Okay.
and so, we've seen this happen, and yet there isn't really an instruction manual for how to show up. And one of the metaphors that I've used, speaking to
Mm,
metaphor, is
mm.
okay, you have to be the mountain
Yeah.
in this situation. The
Mhm.
feminine is the raging river, and without the
Mhm.
mountain, the feminine turns into this puddle.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about any body of water. Like it becomes a puddle unless there's a container, like you said. So this tea would just be all over the floor unless there was a container. It doesn't mean that I'm containing and controlling the feminine. That is not what the mountain does. If anything, the river is carving away at the mountain in every single turn. So,
Yes.
how does that metaphor sound to you, and how can we refine it in order for
Mm.
men to be a little bit more in their healthy masculine, whatever that means? I don't even like having to qualify it as healthy masculine, but we have to nowadays because we also have a term toxic masculine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, tell me about this. How does that metaphor sit with you, and how can we refine it?
You know what came to me, and so beautiful, is the blood pools of the fetus, right? They're just the blood is there and it's just in a pool. And what brings it, it already has aliveness, and for Snyder's perspective is that blood carries the higher I of the human being, and that
Right.
is the part that is the most subtle sensing organ we have. But how does it come into motion? As you just said, the mountain metaphor in the body, and I know you know this, and so I'm preaching to the choir here, is this heart tube that has a kind of peristaltic action, and the muscular contraction begins to allow that sensing organ to come into life instead of remaining at this just blood pooling stage. And this is the kind of reflection in the being that this mother, with her formative forces for the last 9 months, has created. And for me, it feels important to have a conscious, what would I say, like a conscious ritual that this creative forming process has ended, is over. The being is,
Mm,
in one way, autonomous and separate. In another way, of course, there will be nurturing and feeding, and the mother has a part in that. But now the father has a part in that
mm,
in a whole new way. But even before that, it's not like, oh, now it's time for the birth. As a dude, I now have a function.
mm,
I got to be calm, cool, and collected. But wait a minute. There was a whole process of 9 months where you have an opportunity for a lot of activity, for a lot of masculine activity with this being who can hear you, who can feel you, who has a kind of a sensation that goes way beyond the womb into some of these things we've been able to measure with conductivity measures, and some of them we're still learning, but some of them we just already know and are waiting for science to catch up. It's we have a relationship with that being, and we're developing a new relationship with. I love what Stephanie said, that in a way she's across the threshold with this being. It's
mm.
not necessarily like just this being is coming this direction. There
She's
was
being pulled into motherhood.
She's been
That's
pulled
how
into.
she felt. Yeah, I think that's the only time I've ever heard anybody say that in my
It's
entire life.
I
Yeah,
haven't heard it said that way either.
yeah.
And that's what it is. It's like my wife correcting me and saying, "No, I said I'd been touched by God." There's a real difference in hierarchy here between the one and my particular personal angel. And she said it and knew it, and it wasn't like I think or I wonder. It's this already has happened, and I'm a completely new being right now. And your opportunity as a male is to come along for that ride and to become a completely new being yourself. So that by the time the so-called birth happens, there's already been a birth. That was the flame of conception 9 months before. And then there's this constant process of getting to know that being who is overlighting and orchestrating that little fetus, that embryo.
Mm,
And in
mm,
Steiner's conception, he says the more developed the soul is, the earlier and more engaged, actively engaged they are in the process of forming himself or herself in the womb. We're back to your entheogenic journey of like, oh, I'm the creator and I'm the one having the conversation with the creator, and I'm the one challenging the one who's having the conversation with the creator. Yes, I'm all of these things. And the man can recognize I have an active co-creative part to play in the
yes.
formation of just getting. so fired up.
Mm,
This being, so the woman has this creative forming process in it. The being itself has a forming process, and the man has an essential role in that process. And if he does his job, then when the birth comes, even if he can't be there, he's there and he's been there and he's going to be there. And that being coming into that body, he knows that, can rest in that. And it's who cares if they cut the cord? Who cares if they catch the actual physical body? They've caught the energetic body. They've caught the soul, the spirit. They're holding it with the mother. Mm.
mm. There's the a term, I think it's lotus Lodismother. It's an Icelandic term for midwife, and it's the receiver of the light.
Mm.
And so when I think about this man standing there, he's like, I'm going to be a dad now. Here's the baby coming. And he puts his hands out and receives the light.
Yeah.
That feels to me like a feminine sort of construct within his masculine container, where now,
Mm.
in the woman giving birth also is doing this very directive kind of thing. It feels very masculine. I don't know if that's true or not in the way you view it, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah.
And so we have a role reversal,
Hmm.
as opposed to I'm here to protect and secure and create the boundaries. You actually also are softening into kind of like if somebody throws you an egg,
Yeah.
you cradle it.
Yep.
And in this case, you're receiving this life into the world. Now, that's not what most men are doing nowadays, but as an example, is this
Yes.
where we can start to play with these polarities?
Yeah.
In other words, when you say does his job right, what does that mean?
That's
Because I think
beautiful.
so many
Yeah.
men are really, really wanting to, they're really actually asking for the opportunity, and nobody's really giving them the door to step through.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what that means is bracketing all your own stuff and just leaving it at the door of whether the home birth or hospital. And again, none of those things matter. It's your job as the masculine overlighting presence to hold a huge masculine frame so that that your wife can come into her masculine form. Because my God, she is pushing, she is groaning, she might be
Fighting for her
shitting.
life. Yeah.
She's aware of life and death for her and for this child. She's in relationship to you. There is so much going on, so much activity, and activity is generally very masculine. That's a
Mm-hmm.
masculine force. And my capacity, as you said, to be the receiver in those moments when the when the OB said, the baby's not crowning and your labia are engorged, and I think we need to do an emergency C, and my wife goes, "Oh, hell no." You know, it is not my opportunity there to bring some kind of masculine that, but to go baby. You do you, and I got you. I'm here, and whatever needs to happen is happening, and I'm right here. If you start to go completely out of your mind and your life is in danger, then I'm going to come in a masculine way and in a hurry, right? And
Mm.
that's the part of recognizing I am completely soft and open and receiving and ready for this light, this lotus mutter, until the moment or unless it comes. And by the way, it never did during our whole birth sequence. I was there from start to finish. I was available. I could open the labia and I could see Liam's head. I could see the top of his crown, Jim just sitting there in bliss, not pushing at all because of the Down syndrome factor. We didn't know he had Down syndrome. He was just like, he's just hanging out there. And then there came a moment when she, in her mother wisdom, as masculine mother wisdom, recognized it's time to cut myself open and pull this baby out, or both of us may be lost. And so she made that
Beautiful.
decision. And I'm there going, right on, babe, whatever you need. And so then that took place. But she didn't want the drug. She didn't want surgery. Obviously, no woman does, I don't think. Um, and so that whole process was one of me being with her, being the mountain. So there was that masculine quality, but the mountain doesn't say anything and it doesn't move. It slowly gets worn
Hmm.
away, but
Hmm.
it's so stable And yeah, that raging mama that she gets to be, men understand this because if they've had an opportunity to use their anger in a healthy anger way for constructive purposes and to give them energy and to bring them back to themselves and recognize, whoa, why am I so angry? Well, I've missed something here in my development and I'm upset about that. And it took anger to wake me up. They know that that's a helpful force in whatever way it needs to come out, and they welcome that in their wife to do that.
Mm. Yeah. You know, I guess we have to start somewhere, but unfortunately, in the world of people advertising, you know, to these men, like here's some ideas as to what you can do to support, you know, your partner as they're bringing your child into the world. There's a lot of
Mm,
acupressure and there's a lot of, have the bags packed, and all of that is like so easy for us as men to do. It's the checklist.
yes.
And
Yeah.
yet here you are describing, I mean, it's like I've always said, it's the ultimate flex of your masculinity.
Hmm.
But we have to reorient ourselves, of course, to masculinity and femininity because there's so much power in every man I see walking through. And I live in a part of the world, I don't know about Idaho, but where men are just men, in
Hmm.
the very, very typical way. And I've heard you say
Most of the men
before,
up here look like Sasquatch. So yeah,
okay, yeah, it's
men are
just,
definitely men up here. They're like 6'6", and you know,
you didn't see Sasquatch, you just saw a guy from Idaho. Sorry.
it's right. It's always
Um,
just been a guy from Idaho.
yeah, well, let's use the guy from Idaho in our sort of mind's eye here.
Yeah.
And we have this guy it's gotten him through his life.
Yes.
But I heard you say, I think it was on Amy Fournier's podcast. Hi, Amy, if you're listening.
Yeah. Hey,
You
Amy.
you described it as by virtue of us not being in touch with our feminine, we're leaving half of our power off the table.
Mm,
And I don't want to necessarily have you rehash everything you said in these other conversations, but there's something really important about that. And the reason I say that is that there's this body worker. His
mm,
name's Chris, and again, these are people that would not mind me
yeah.
dousing them with praise.
Yeah.
Chris is not a very big guy. He
Okay.
has a tree limb service here in Kentucky and in Louisville, and he is also a body worker.
Okay.
And when he's sitting still, he's always gyrating his hips and moving. He has this like fluidity to him. He had a really,
Mm,
really hard upbringing, which I'm not at liberty to elaborate, but a lot of people have. And yet this guy has this deeply feminine
mm,
receptivity to him that it's like,
mm,
how did you get that out of your upbringing?
yeah.
And so this guy feels to me, despite having a smaller stature, despite
Mhm.
um, not being one of those guys, like not the Sasquatch guy from Idaho. He doesn't have that big presence, but man, the guy feel powerful.
Yeah.
And he's really worked on nurturing this feminine. So let's talk about this in however you want. But I think there's something really critical here, even for the guys that are going to be, especially for the guys that are going to be fathers. They're welcoming life into the world. There's this baby growing. You got 9 months to work on it.
Yeah.
There is value to nurturing your feminine. I don't know if men necessarily know how to do that without compromising in their sort of apprehension, compromising their masculinity. So let's spend some time on this. And I know I want to be respectful of your time as well. So you just keep me on point here.
Hmm. I think that's the hook, the thing you said at the end, the word compromising. Somehow I'm compromising my masculinity to bring a femininity. For example, my wife is not the one who lovingly and gently, slowly does effleurage, which is a technique, but it's actually just a love affair with my 14-year-old son and I, where because he has Down syndrome and autism, his extremities often can feel like maybe they don't belong to him. And not that he's ever said this, but the way
Mm,
he says it is um, uh, stroke the foot, Papa, you know, hand. And so what he needs is for me to gently give a kind of a inviting motion from the most distal portion to the proximal portion. So what I'm doing right now is stroking my fingertips down to the base of my hand on both sides. The same thing with the foot moving up toward the knee. And at the knee, he's good. So it's either stroke the foot or stroke the knee. It's the hand. It's
Hmm.
not the elbow. It's not the shoulder. It's not my don't touch my face. Just stay away from my face, bro. Um, what I need is those forces moving toward my face because there's incredible wisdom and a wake up quality that's going to allow me to actually walk in the world with these feet and use my hands to be creative in the world and do things. And that process is a daily process, night and morning. The first thing that happens is he comes into me when he wakes up in the morning, and I am asked to stroke his feet and his hands. And that's every day, and at night, it's the same thing. It's this process of
Hmm.
incarnation. And it's a very soft and slow and feminine. If somebody were to take a picture of that, they'd go like, whoa, like a lot of dudes would definitely be out of their comfort zone experiencing that between a man and his son. And now he's a teenage son. Like he not only likes that kind of touch, but he likes me to squeeze him as hard as I can squeeze him because he's got a big barrel chest now. I can hear his bones crack and he's just giggling and just like, squeeze, Papa. He wants
Interesting.
compression and strong. And that, again, that's something that is typically very masculine, if you will, but you've got to do it with sensitivity, or you could easily, as a full-grown man, I could break his back, I could crush him.
Hmm.
So there is a feminine quality to that, and it's the difference between boxing and kicking, this percussive movement that men like to do, the whole chest bump and bump them on the butt as they go back into the game. That's actually an abridgment of connection. Even the way we shake hands with each other, kind of
Right.
shove our hand into the other guy's hand instead of like a typical original people's way, which is to move past that blockage of energy and move wrist to wrist or just give a hug.
Have
That nature, and then give a real hug. Don't give a block
you
hug.
ever
Like,
been hugged by Kyle Kingsbury?
yeah, oh yeah,
Talk about
definitely.
a 6'4" Adonis of a man wrapping you up. He could pop your head off, and gosh, he brings you in like into his heart.
He does.
That's what I think all the guys that are doing the fist bumping and all that, they really crave that.
They do. They do.
They
And,
really
and
crave
that's
that. And oh,
pure
it would just be
masculine touch.
too feminine to let myself like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I even get into a reframe for myself to recognize, what if that's really the true masculine? That the true masculine is so
Right.
powerful that it allows itself to melt into another man. And that's what I practice in these men's group. I practice, okay, guys, you guys have done the handshake. Let's do a handshake. Everybody find a partner and shake hands. Hey, man, how you doing? That kind of stuff. I go, great. Now just take their hand.
Hmm.
And we just sit with that. And I say, notice what you notice. Are you looking the man in the eye? Are you waiting for this to be over? How long is Edmund going to make me do this? But what are you noticing? If you were a real man, is it really this difficult for you to just sit there and hold somebody's hand? How powerful are you? You can't hold somebody's hand without being so uncomfortable that you're crawling out of your skin.
Hmm.
There's no strength in you if you can't hold a man's hand for 60 seconds and still be you. And now let's try a hug. And we do the same thing. We work up. We do 10 seconds. We do 20. We do 30. And then we do 60. And I had one pair still in it after the 60. Vietnam vet, done a lot of work. And the man he was holding had done a lot of work. And the rest, like I say, when one man does his work, we all do our work. Everybody else is just sitting there. I mean, I'm actually starting to sweat right now because I'm remembering this experience of these men witnessing the man hugging the other man. and deeply connected to himself.
So, if I might interject, what I'm really feeling here is that if I were to avert my gaze from another man on the street, let's say,
Mhm.
I'm not actually willing to let them see me, which is actually a reflection of me not actually being willing to receive them.
Yeah.
And so there's a closed offness feeling there, but it's more than just, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's a brother or a sister in the human
yeah,
race, right? So it's if you can do that on your journey and recognize you're God, but you can't do it with a brother walking down the street.
yeah, how enlightened
Yeah,
have you become?
yeah, right. That's what I mean by we become capable of more service and encounter in the world through these medicine journeys, or we don't, or
Man,
we're
do I
just
love
fooling
that.
ourselves. We're remaining so self-satisfied and smug about how developed we are as we're walking by these people on the street. That's what we're thinking about ourselves. We're completely lost. We lost the opportunity for that encounter. And for Ra, for the law of one, his suggestion is that you wake up every morning and you can radiate love to all of creation, and that you can start to perceive who's able to receive it and at what level. So you're offering it at the level it can be received. Think about that. When a guy opens his heart, he's kind of like, yeah, dude, I'm wide open now. This is not wisdom. How much can a person receive what you have to offer? You're paying attention to that. We're back to the
Mm,
notion of wrestling, for example. When I love wrestling, and when I teach, for example, children how to wrestle, I teach them to wrestle to the point of compression that meets the other person's edge but doesn't go beyond it. So we're not hurting each other. We're in relationship to each other. Wrestling is actually a dance. And yeah, it's an intense dance, but that's okay. There are lots of intense dances. And so that's the goal, is to be in relationship, stay in relationship, and bring your best. And I teach them that, for example, if they play football or basketball, there are often two ways to play football. One is the flag football version where you get to grab a flag. The other is take them down.
mm,
And out on the sand lot, nobody has equipment on. And so what I've always taught is what I call hugby instead of rugby, which is that if Nathan has the football or the rugby ball and he's coming toward me, all I'm trying to do is not knock him out and take him down, but I'm wrapping my arms around him. I'm not hitting him. It's a wrap. It's a wrestling move, and I'm stopping his forward progress. And that's where the ball stops. And that's what I've been able to get all of my different schools and teachers and administrators to say, okay, we can say yes to that. We see what they're doing. It's safe. They're not throwing them down to the ground. It's not percussive, but it's more than the flag football or just the two
yeah,
hand version. This is what I'm talking about, where we're coming to a point of where do we find relationship with each other where we can bring the, but we can also bring the, okay, I'm not hurting anybody here. I'm actually
right.
making a deeper connection with myself and them in the moment of trying my damnedest to slow them down, to stop their forward progress. And they're trying their damnedest. But I say to them, listen, you're not throwing elbows in that moment. You're not kicking up your heels and lifting knees and trying to skirt out of that. You're just simply trying to make your way forward. You're feeling the obstruction to that. And there's a moment where yes, we both recognize we're done. Don't start to flail. This is not becoming.
Hmm. Yeah, something comes to mind. I think it was from Robert Bly from Iron John, or what? Iron John was like a translation of Iron Hans. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Um, where Bly describes, it's one thing to have a sword. It's another thing to swing the sword to hurt somebody else. But it's a real
Mhm.
special thing to be able to show your sword and then to put it down. And so, what I
Not
want
just
to,
to put it down, not just to put it down. And this is really important. So I'm
okay,
sorry to cut you off,
no,
but
please.
the scabbard in Arthurian legend is more powerful than the sword, because a sword without a scabbard is nothing but danger. It's
Oh,
the
I
immaterial.
see.
That is the definition of toxic masculinity.
Oh, okay. Say more. Just keep going with this metaphor because this
So
is where I went.
If
Yeah.
Lancelot had been able to understand that, he would have moved beyond the warrior lover archetype into the king archetype,
Uh-huh.
which is what Arthur held. If Arthur had been more aware of being able to move into a mature lover archetype and mature warrior archetype, he had more of the mature warrior archetype, but the lover is what he was lacking. This is why Guinevere, as her archetype, needed
Mm.
the Lancelot lover archetype, but his was not mature enough to sheathe that scabbard. It's like when a woman comes towards you and you're already married and you're good, right? But this woman is 20 years younger and she's gorgeous and she's brilliant and you could see that she could support you in every way imaginable and she wants to and she's letting you know in no uncertain terms. How is it that you can keep your sword sheathed and recognize that she's projecting her mature masculine onto you, that that's what she's actually seeking, is to be reminded of herself. So don't get distracted in that moment and think she wants me. She doesn't.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
She
Mm-hmm.
has no interest in you whatsoever. She just can't remember it in that moment. And your opportunity is to help her awaken to the fact, woman, you have all this and more in you. And you just happen to see it reflected in my presence. And so let's keep the sword sheathed. And this is where it gets tricky because on an energetic level, there is a huge attraction happening between the two of you. You got a boner, you're stiff as wood, right? She's incredibly wet. That energy is just like, wow. And the idea is not to shut it down and not to move into it, but to be with it.
Mm-hmm.
And what you will notice is that eventually that energy starts to move up to the second energy center, which is the power center. The right use of power, the right use of possession or freedom. How do I choose to control or not to control the situation? Can I be with that energy center? Then it moves up to the emotional energy center. And finally, it moves up into the heart. Now we've got some real work to do with this woman if we're able to move to that level with her. Now it moves to the communication center. Now it moves to the thought center. And now it moves to the spirit center. This is what Magdalene and Christ represented for all of humanity. She was trained in the school of Isis to transmute that power all the way up through the sacred chakra. And the Christ being was trained to bring it all the way down through the body with her help. It's like the baby that you talk about. When the baby's coming down, Steph is coming up. So Magdalene was coming up and Christ was coming down, and they fructified each other, going both directions, and they meet where? Right in the heart.
Hmm. I think we've spoken to masculine and feminine um, in relationship quite a bit. And so if you were to say, there are some exercises you and Stephanie can do in order for you to nurture your feminine without compromising your masculine in the ways we've just discussed, there's that extra sort of barrier to entry. Because then there's like, oh, is my wife, my high school sweetheart, is she going to judge me for doing this or that? And so it might actually be more helpful for me to start. Um, I don't want to use getting in touch with my feminine because that's just what Mother Culture has told us. But I guess for lack of better terms, let's just say nurturing my feminine,
Okay.
doing that on my own.
Yeah.
So, what is something that, as I'm going through my life, as I'm
Mhm.
taking a shower, as I'm going to the restroom, as I'm falling asleep, I don't know. What is something that somebody could do in order to just get in, like allow themselves to start even receiving their own touch? I guess I'm kind of answering the question, but I'm curious if you've found this come up in
Mhm.
men's groups. And are there
Mhm.
exercises that we can either do with other men or that we can do with ourselves that actually
Yeah.
might help? nourish our own relationship way ahead of the birth, way ahead of even the conception process, which we all
Right.
should know how that works by now.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Uh, the yeah, we could start with touch, and we could start with the system might be helpful when we're first doing some practices before we go off system, which is the goal, to be spontaneous and unstudied, and completely honest with ourselves. But starting with a system might be helpful. So in the touch, for example, if we were to use the 12-fold senses model that Steiner offered, his sense of touch is that it maps onto the sense of knowing the other fully. And so, if we're able to feel deeply touched by ourselves, and yes, start physically with the sense of that there's a touch that can take place. And as we're so-called stroking ourselves, isn't it interesting that the idea of the guys are going to start sort of twittering and thinking about masturbation, like, yeah, I touched myself. And isn't that interesting that that seems to be,
Mm,
we're only finding ourselves touching ourselves in a particular area. And yes, pleasure is the result of that. So is fantasy, by the way, which may take us away from ourselves and our wives if we're not careful. What are we thinking about our wives? Have you ever actually masturbated and thought about loving yourself the whole time and not brought in the image of a woman up?
wow. Yeah.
Try it out, because when I first started this practice when I was in my 20s, it was like I was like nowhere. Like what am I doing? Why do
Yeah.
I even try to do this? This is stupid and ridiculous. I have no energy for myself whatsoever. And I sort of look at myself and go, well, do you have love for yourself? That this whole process is called making love, and masturbation, the idea of it is making love, no matter what you get down to. It's it's not about a pressure relief, or just pleasure. So it's not just pressure or pleasure, unless you want to stay physicalized your whole life. What are you actually doing, and can you have a kind of self-loving process? It would be very similar to when you see yourself in the mirror. What are you looking at? Are you judging yourself and looking for how you've aged or haven't aged and how healthy you feel? All of those are fine, but they're all wellness indicators. They're not the self interacting with the self. And can you soften that gaze and say, good morning, brother? I
Mm,
love you. And who are you in this moment? Who are you today? And what do you have to bring to this world? We have these mirrors, and this is an ancient process called scrying. And it starts with our connection with ourself when we scry, when we use a reflective surface. It could be a still pond, or again, we're back to the iron Hans image. It could be a copper mirror, because that softens the gaze enough to actually see what past life integrations we haven't taken the time to notice and to incorporate into our karmic working with each other. We haven't even gotten into the process of birth and what comes before that, but that's a part of that, because we have a veil that we draw over ourselves in order to have the fun of a free incarnation and take the joyride for a while, until we wake up and recognize, oh, there are pieces of myself, my intellect from previous times that are important. So I'm not going to go back and look at those pieces for rubbernecking sake, for some kind of curiosity or gratuity. I'm actually looking for specific instances of pieces that are not yet integrated, and how I can do that, because I have the opportunity now, again, because I'm embodied.
mm,
And so this practice of self-touch leads to all of those practices, leads to us getting in touch with ourselves. And then by extension, being deeply in touch with another person, which Steiner calls the 12th sense. Can I apprehend the other being in his fullness and his beauty? As I'm sitting and being with you, for example, that is always my effort, Nathan, is how do I connect with this being in a more and more whole and complete and undivided, attentive way?
mm,
And it all starts, how do I stroke my own finger? How do I stroke my own foot? And can I stroke myself in almost a third person perspective? In other words, can I feel myself touching myself in a way that Something greater than me is touching myself, the highest and the best. Because we didn't even get into how I stroke Liam. That's part of what happens is there's an effleurage, which is a subtle movement that occurs before my physical hand touches his fingertips even. And that move is the instructive move. It's a spirit energetic move that guides my hand in the configuration it needs to so that forces flow around his fingers in such a way that he can come into himself and have more capacity. That's not just rubbing his fingers.
Mm. Hmm.
And I have to be completely focused on that. I can't be thinking about what I'm going to make him for breakfast. Or there's nothing happening except skin touching skin. And usually he takes my hand and moves it if I get distracted. Or he taps me on my chest like, Dad, yo.
Tune in.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're right here.
we're right here.
Hmm.
You don't rub your flesh on my flesh. I asked for touch. And touch is two spirits in a flow together. And your hand is following that movement, not leading it.
Oh.
And that's what a lot of sex is. And what it can be is following that movement of two spirits and let the body follow that. And my God, the ironically, the pleasure and the bliss that's the result of that is like, oh, if I had only known this. But the point is, you can't only know that because that's all a place of selfishness. Once you get to that place, don't get distracted by the bliss and the pleasure. Recognize that you can generate enough force to power a new sun in a solar system with your wife.
Hmm.
We're that powerful. And I'm not saying that metaphorically. That's what true love making is. You're creating a force of love in the universe. It's the most intelligent working force there is. That's how universes get made. Otherwise, they're off to a bad start.
Have you met Mark Gaffney?
No, Mark Anthony?
Mark Gaffney, he's a Hebrew mystic. He wrote a book called A Return to Eros that
No,
speaks
don't hear
very
about him.
directly to what you just said, which is quite
Mm,
fascinating. Starting with the cherubim of the ark and all of these old reimagining a lot of these old concepts, but
mm,
that the that love making results in the emergence of new properties that have never been experienced before.
yeah,
And so effectively what's happening from the subatomic up through the cosmos, all the way up through the chain, is lovemaking. And we are
yeah,
engaging in the creation of the universe, even by making good love.
yeah.
And
This
if you
is
don't
social
believe me, look at your
intercourse.
kid.
Yeah, this is social intercourse, right? What we're doing right now, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
And how can we make this social intercourse a sacramental intercourse?
Hmm.
How can we raise it to that level? And usually it means we start with the heart and we raise to the level of being so pure and open and honest in whatever we say to each other, so unstudied that we don't even know what's coming. And then sometimes we go, "Woo, did I say that? Could I
Yeah.
say that?" We hear
Yeah.
the ego marker that's going, "Hey, dude, do you really want to do this?" And then it goes to the creative capacity, and we're in a whole new land where intelligent energy turns into intelligent infinity. And when those two map with the love present, you're in sacramental communication. And you're looking for that if you're looking for anything in a love encounter, in making love with your woman. And I'm what I mean by your woman is not your wife.
Right. Right.
I mean, she gets the benefit of it, but you being present and home to yourself and full and then being with her, she's over the moon anyway. She doesn't need you to so-called connect with her. You are her because
Yeah.
you are yourself in your woman nature as well as your man nature coming toward her. And that's, man, there's not much sexier than that. I mean, yesterday I cleaned the refrigerator, for example,
It's pretty.
and she just looked at me and she came over. She said, "My God, if women just knew what a turn on it is, and if men could understand, like when I open that fridge and see all of those just spotless shelves, glass, plastic, everything, like let's go upstairs.
Yeah.
And we did.
Yeah,
And it was beautiful.
of course. Yeah, there's this since we're speaking of, hang on one second. Oh, I got my mute button just in time. Otherwise the audience's ears would have just been blown out. There's this sort of essence that it's like, we go upstairs and then the one person kind of rolls over and is like, huh, and you're like, huh, and I remind people that like you're those sexual encounters, the ones that matter the most to me are the ones where we've been flirtatious for maybe weeks on end.
Yeah.
And there's maybe sex in between there, but there's this something's been we've been working up to this, and that requires us to actually lean in and lean forward and do this little dance, going back to, you should never wield a sword until you've learned how to dance.
Hmm.
There's this dance, this practiced dance, and it's not choreographed. It's just something that you feel happening. And I think I think we should wrap up with that. I think that I want people to imagine this masculinity and femininity for you to be the full you, man or woman. There is a dance even within you. And then there's going to be a dance with those energies, so to speak, within you. Those are going to be dancing with those energies in your partner. And when we get the right slurry of magic here, new things emerge.
Yeah.
And I want to just invite men to lean into that. Um, you are more of a man when you've nurtured this feminine side. You're twice as powerful, if not maybe 101% of what
Yeah,
you
it's
were before.
exponential.
Yeah, it's not
I think it's to
linear.
the power of two on a superscript.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not additive, it's multiplicative.
right, right. Yeah, logarithmic. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Um, any final thoughts? This was great. I want to end a little, we're going to get into where we go when we die and where do babies come from in our next installment. We'll put that on the books in the future.
Okay.
I want to make sure you have some time to break before your next call, but any final thoughts, anything that's really still kind of lingering here you'd like to
Hmm.
share?
What's coming to me in this moment is that it's all relationship. And I remember reading a beautiful quote about from Maurice Merleau-Ponty, phenomenological philosopher in the 50s, who had written something called The Spatiality of the Body as part of his phenomenology of perception. And he was starting to bring the world of the philosophical phenomenologists like Husserl, for example, into the body, into sexuality, into embodiment itself. And he was talking about consciousness as essence and that the relationship is all. I remember being deeply moved by that because I was taking a 5 year subtle energy movement process called spatial dynamics, which a lot of individuals that are in the Waldorf sector take. It's an outgrowth of Boatman gymnastics, which is something that Steiner engendered through the help of a military fellow, a colonel, I think, over in Germany, because he recognized that uh, the flow of movement of eurythmy is quite beautiful, and the colors and the silk scarves and the spoken word is all quite lovely. But when the kids, and particularly the young men, move into seventh grade in adolescence, he recognized there's a deficit here. They were leaning against the walls and the lockers. They were slouching in their chairs. And he realized, okay, eurythmy, this beautiful idea of the word and the tone made visible, that's awesome. And it's great. And it's one-sided. It's only half of the human being. And so he requisitioned this officer to develop spatial movements that would not be physical movements, but that they would strongly affect the physical body. They would be a bottom-up approach that would complement the top-down approach of eurythmy, which is like man coming from the stars
Yeah.
is eurythmy, and this is the human being as mountain to cite your earlier image. that we build up these forces, and they're spiritual, energetic forces. It's not just physical. And so
Got to sneeze.
I thought I was going to sneeze. Yours is catching. And and so that was the 5 year training that I was in during that time, and having that Merleau-Ponty experience of consciousness's essence, meaning like embodied, and that all is relationship. And that has stuck with me over these last, 4 decades, that it's my relationship to ideas as beings that matters.
Hmm.
There's a faithfulness and a responsibility and a love and a care that I can take toward that idea because it was engendered by a being. And I want relationship that's honoring and respectful with that being. It's the same thing with all my actions in the world. They're guided by beings. And my opportunity is to start self-guiding. Steiner's picture of I'm bringing to you all the initiatory streams, all the esoteric schools, all the places of wisdom from, Greece and even all the way back to the Phoenicians, the Lemurians, for God's sake. Um, and I'm just offering them to you on a silver platter, not to let you get giddy with them or to spout them chapter and verse, but to recognize yourself in all of them because you were there during all of these times in some aspect of consciousness. Recognize the pieces and parts. This is why he doesn't have any interest in gratuitous looking into past lives, because he's basically saying to you without saying it, I just laid out every possibility for every past life anybody has ever had. It's sitting right here. Open the book to whatever page you need to, let your body guide you, read one sentence and work with it for the next 6 months.
Hmm.
That's all that's needed. You are your own guide now. You are your own initiator. This high Elohim Christ being has come to the planet to represent that possibility. Let's go do it. So I think that's the ending that I would like to offer, is that it's our relationship which is the essence of all, our relationship to everything we encounter within ourselves and outside of ourselves.
Well said.
Well, I didn't say it. Maurice
Well,
Merleau-Ponty did.
you you translated it
Yeah,
into
I
your
stole
lips.
most of it from
Your,
Steiner, and just as he knows, there's nothing new under the sun. He's not upset with me about it. I don't think. I
yeah,
think he's
yeah.
happy that it's being embodied. That's
Can
the
check
word.
in on your relationship with him later. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Edmund. I hope you have a really great day.
Likewise.
I love you. Thank you.
I love you too.
Great to see you again.
Likewise.